You guys see my hat? You like my hat? Yeah. I I dressed for the occasion. So thank you everybody for being there. Uh, it is a real pleasure to you know share with you guys a little bit about this amazing country, Colombia. As you probably know, I'm originally from Costa Rica. I'm talking from Costa Rica right now. And well, I have been very fortunate to be leading trips here and other parts of Latin America. And this time we decided to take a step forward and go for Colombia. Simply, number one country in the world. No other country has more species of birds than Colombia. And, as we will discuss in a little bit, this is no coincidence. So, with almost 2,000 species of birds, Colombia stands as the number one country in the world. And the presentation tonight will hopefully, and I'll try to uh, bring up the top three factors that influence this immense diversity of species of not just birds, but when you're in Colombia, you're running into orchids everywhere you look. You're running into insects, beautiful butterflies, everything you can imagine, right? We were so fortunate that in one of the trails as we were coming back down, um, I don't know if you guys are familiar with an animal. It's a mammal called Tyra. It's in the weasel family, and we were heading down the trail, and we were surrounded by fruit crows and swans and things, and then we hear this sort of squealing sound like a cat. What is that? And next thing we know, there's just three Tyras that come fighting across the trail right in front of us, right? And everything happened in just a couple of minutes, and it was just fantastic to have such an encounter there. Pyras are kind of like the equivalent in the tropics of the wolverines. You can put it that way. It's a big, weak whistle, very aggressive, but yet beautiful. Aggressive, for the way they hunt and all that. Anyhow, so Colombia is full of magical moments, full of beautiful landscapes, and I can still savor the coffee. And to say that as a Costa Rican, it means a lot because our coffee here, we praise it as being great, But I have to say that Colombian coffee, for a very good reason, is all the way up there. And here we go. So I named this Colombia, world's birding capital. This is a great-breasted mountain toucan. It is endemic to the northern Andes. It also ventures into Ecuador a little bit, and this was a fantastic encounter of two of them, actually. I wasn't quick enough to get both of them in the same frame, but by the way, all the pictures we're going to see tonight are fresh out of the oven. They all came from the trip. Kat and I and our good friends in Colombia, Paulo and Luz, we uh, we spent basically the last week there scouting and checking some of the places here. If that's okay, I'm gonna hide myself here because I want you guys to focus on the uh, on the slides. Okay, so let's get started. As I said, this trip is basically a way to introduce Colombia as the most avian diverse country in the world. Uh, Once again, 2,000 species of birds. 90 of those are only found in Colombia. 90. Okay, so for those of us maybe that are not, okay, let's go. Here we go. That are not entirely familiar with Colombia. Colombia lies in the northwestern top corner of South America. It is bordered by five countries, right? And it also has coasts on the Caribbean Sea, part of the Atlantic Ocean, and on the Pacific Ocean as well. Okay. The capital city is Bogota, which lies in the on the eastern Sierras, the eastern mountain range, with a population of over 8 million people. Bogota is a busy town. Kat was just there, I think, and well, she can tell us more about it. But it's a busy town and 8 million people. The whole population of Colombia pushes up to 52 million people in an area of 440,000 square miles. That is, to put it into perspective, about twice the size of Texas, more or less. Okay, so you can put two Texas in Colombia, pretty much. Okay, uh, so not only is it's a great official language is Spanish, although there are multiple indigenous languages that are spoken throughout the country. But Spanish is the official language. And Colombia is simply a country of both geographic and cultural diversity because every place you go has its own identity. The towns, the people there, the food, every town has special food, all the different crops. Of course, that culture behind the coffee industry there is quite, I mean, it's hard not to feel integrated with a country like Colombia once you're there, okay? Now to move on, uh, these are what I consider the top reasons why Colombia is number one country in birds. As I said, this is not a coincidence, right? It's the result of three major factors. Number one is the geographic location. Colombia sits right at the crossroads of two continents, basically South America joining Central America and then joining North America. So it sits right there at the meeting point of all those, okay? Second, it's due to the geological origin of the country, the Andes being there, and then the plains and the coastal areas and all that creates a tremendous complex topography in the country. Okay, with three ranges, as we're going to see in a little bit, and multiple inner mountain valleys, and the plains, and the lowlands, and the Amazon basin that it also has part on. Simply make Colombia very unique, right? And then the third reason is the incredible variety, extraordinary variety of ecosystems that are contained within its borders, right? Remember, it's a country it's one of the medium to large size countries in South America. But yet, if you compare it to other parts of the world, it's still considered not such a big country. Okay, so we're gonna examine these factors a little bit more in detail in the next few slides. So, by the way, this is a beautiful hummingbird that is also an endemic to those northern Andes. It's the great sapphire wing. Okay, it's a big hummingbird. It's the second largest hummingbird, only after the giant hummingbird that maybe some of you have seen. But this is definitely beautiful and is perfectly showing why it's called sapphire wing, as you can see there. This picture was taken right at the hot springs at the base of Nevado del Ruiz volcano. Okay, moving on. Reason number one, geographic crossroads. As I mentioned, Colombia is uniquely positioned at the junction of Central and South America. Okay, this is a special place, of course, because the species from both regions overlap here, basically creating a natural mixing zone. Okay, so essentially, um, this means that species that migrate from the north and those migrate from the southern portion of South America northward, right, again, find their meeting point. Very much the case of Panama and Costa Rica, but of course at a greater extent here in Colombia because it is simply receiving species from a larger area, a huge unit, which is South America. Okay. Um, well, the fact that it has oceans on both Pacific and Caribbean add special marine and coastal habitats, right? So this brings, again, conditions for more species to be found in that area. And as you can see in this map that I added here, uh, Colombia is directly positioned along major migration routes, okay? For both spring and fall migration, Colombia sits there in a privileged place so that it receives approximately 200, maybe more, maybe a little more than 200 migratory species each year. Okay, this is both mostly from North America, but also some from South America, the extreme southern portion of South America. They migrate north and they find their wintering grounds. In that particular case, in Colombia, right? So these migratory species basically, what they do is they enrich the already staggering diversity of resident species that they have. Okay, so if you look at this would be the factor number one. Okay, now let's launch into number two. Uh, complex topography. One of the strongest drivers of Colombia's bird diversity is this incredible and dramatic landscape that they have there. Okay, if you okay, here it is. You can see my little red dot here. The Andes come from Ecuador, from Peru, Ecuador, south along the Pacific coast, and right as they reach Colombia, they split into three. One, this is the western, central, and eastern, right? And additionally, we have this particular case right here on the north part of the country. Only about 30 miles from the coast, you get to 18,000 feet. This is the Santa Marta Mountains. This is another story. This is another talk itself. But there are approximately 30 species that are exclusively found in this mountain right here. A single, basically isolated, small coastal range that no other country in the world has. Okay. Um, so we're looking at the topography of here, of course. The highest peaks are here. Also, there are high sections here, 17,000, some of them. We're going to visit Nevado del Ruiz, which is at about, what was it, 14,500, something like that, at the highest point, at least in our visit, okay? What we can also mention here is that the valleys that are created in between here also help increase the diversity of species, right? There are two major rivers that run between the mountains here, the Cauca River that runs right here in the Cauca Valley, and the Magdalena River that runs on between the central and the eastern slope, okay? The Santa Marta, as I was mentioning here, is a very unique case because it rises right from the coast, pretty much right from the coast to over 18,000 feet above sea level. That is a dramatic case, okay? Then, in addition to all this, we have the other factors, the lowlands or the plains. This is the Amazon, part of the Amazon basin here, on the bottom right part of the country, and then the llanos or the plains, the floodplains, the Orinoquia, which is part of the Orinoco River plains here, that are kind of like grasslands and things. And there's one of the wettest places on Earth is on the west side of the ranges, here, the Chocó region over here. And of course, this is part of the Chocó region as well. And as I mentioned already, the intermountain valleys, right? All these elevation changes, sharp gradients, as it says there, create distinct habitats. So you're looking at these incredible differences in elevation, differences in habitats as you're going in elevation. So if you transects from the high sections to the mid sections and then to the low sections, those transects will yield literally hundreds of species as you're moving there. Okay, so we're looking at that. These two conditions again create the way for basically factor number three, which is ecosystems variety. Okay, this is based on again factors like elevation, temperature, precipitation, humidity, and others. You know, you can create these types of ecosystems rankings or like life zones, also, if you will. And Colombia shows more than 300 different ecosystems right here. So this is simply remarkable. Of course, each ecosystem will in turn be host of specific habitats, and habitats will be home of very specific niches or microhabitats. Once again, yielding the conditions for the speciation to happen or evolution to happen. So therefore, you have more species. Okay. There are, I don't know if you can see here on the top right of the map, right? The three main regions on the Pacific side, the Central Andes, the Caribbean coast, the Orinoco Plains, and the Amazon basin, right? I insist on the Pacific side that the Chocó region, right? It is brighter green here, is one of the wettest places because it receives a lot of the moisture from the Pacific. That moisture crushes at the base of the Andes, and then what you end up having is severe precipitation ranges here. And again, it's an area that is isolated by the Andes and then goes into Panama. And then there's dry forest right as you get closer to the Panama Canal, and that's the end of that. So there's high endemism here. These are like islands that create endemism. So the East Coast, the high mountains of Santa Marta, the intermountain valleys themselves, the high peaks of the Andes, of the three ranges of the Andes, and then the river basins that are on the eastern side of the country. Okay. So high habitat diversity equals exceptional endemism, right? 90, more or less 90 endemic species of birds are found in Colombia. Okay, Colombia. Let me see. We're gonna go next here. Okay. So basically, this is summarizing those factors, but mega diversity, because Colombia is one of those mega diverse countries, specifically talking about biodiversity, of course, right? Uh, Depending on who you talk to, you're gonna say 2,000 species of birds. eBird, eBird has 1,946, I think. That's the latest I checked. Species reported uh, for Colombia, right? Continental United States has about 1,000, something like that. Of lower 48 states and some that have been added there here. So Costa Rica, we have about 940 species right now. So there you go. So it's pushing all the way. If you have a chance and then have access to check some of the eBird statistics, and then you will see that on global big days and all that, Colombia is always going to be number one. There's not been a single global big day or one of those that Colombia does not rank number one. Okay, maybe there was one, but that's when they had a little bit of a situation there with climate and things like that. But there may be only one that don't know that. What is interesting to know is that the territory of Colombia, even though it's twice the size of Texas, and I know that everything is big in Texas, but uh, in this particular case, Colombia being twice the size of Texas, it's only represents less than 1% of the total Earth's land mass, okay, or the emerged land mass, okay, and 1%, but yet they are home of approximately 10% of the entire world's biodiversity. This includes all species, everything. All living organisms. About 10% of that is found in Colombia. And coincidentally, 2,000 species represents more or less also 20% in this case. I mean, no, sorry, yes, 20% of the world's bird species that are in one area. Okay, I was already mentioned they had approximately 200 migratory species, and 43% of the world's paramo. For those of you that are not entirely familiar with paramos, paramos are those specific habitats that are found above timberline. They are found from southern Central America, from Costa Rica, from the central volcanoes in Costa Rica, south into the western part of Panama. They're interrupted there, and then they start again in South America, and they extend south along the Andes. Right? These are highly endangered species and habitats. I'm sorry, highly endangered habitats because of human pressure, ranching, fires, many factors. But Colombia is home of approximately 43% of the paramos, right? The highland paramos. They are like something like look like a meadow in the highlands, right? Above timberline. Generally speaking, timberline here in the tropics occurs at about 11,000 feet above sea level, more or less, something like that. Okay, so what are we? I wanted to also mention, but I already did about the islands, the endemic islands of the Santa Marta Mountains, the intermountain valleys, and the Chocó region on the Pacific side of Colombia, right? Uh-huh. Okay, we're gonna begin here landing this presentation specifically to the trip that we are planning for next year, right? Hopefully, we will have some of you folks from La Hontan or Northwest Nevada Bird Alliance. Lauren, is that it? Yeah. So good. I like the name. I like it. I like it. Yeah. I'd have to get a new hat now. Um, so essentially, we're gonna this trip. It's basically uh, designed to visit some of the top, some of the main areas, of course. But it's a triangle in the central part of the country. Basically, visiting the central, the western mountain ranges or Andes, central and western Andes, and the valley in between them, which is the Cauca Valley, Cauca River Valley, right? uh, this trip has incredible access to uh, various habitats, right? Starting with the central Andes. This is the part where we visit the high peaks of Nevado del Ruiz, uh, pushing what 14,000 feet, something like that in that area. We also stay at a wonderful lodge there, Hacienda del Bosque, that has incredible habitat. And what's also interesting is how the communities and the local entrepreneurs are integrating into birding conservation, ecotourism, and we're very excited about supporting such efforts there. Okay, we visit, for example, one of the reserves called Aug2025, which is a private initiative where the communities are involved, and also, well, it's a mix because the government also has some basically some administration control over the reserves there, but essentially it's a good place to see very unique species like Cauca guan, which is one of the endemic birds in that area. And one of the birds that most people want to see there is it's a very interesting looking hummingbird. It's called the Buffy helmet crest. I have some pictures there. So we're basically spending some time in some of these reserves. Nevado del Ruiz is one of the high peaks in the central range. This is a place where they have the famous hot springs, and there's absolutely amazing birding around those hot springs. That's where I got that picture of the sapphire wing. There's, for example, one of the advantages of this is that you don't have to go long distances to get to these places. So of course, to get from one region to the next, you have to cover some ground. But once you're there, everything is relatively close by. Okay, and then adding high diversity. Okay, probably enough of maps for a minute, and let's start seeing some of the cuties they have there. Okay, so this is the guy I was talking about. This is the Buffy helmet crest, a genus Oxypogon that has only 3 species, and well, it's it's a pretty amazing looking little bird. This is probably a young male. We couldn't really tell whether it was young male or a molting male, but it starts to show that beard, right? That purple beard, and the crazy looking crest. In Colombia, they call it chivito, which means little goat, right? Probably because of that beard and then the horns, right? Chivito del Páramo, or the Páramo little goat. In English, of course, the name is Buffy helmet crest. This is an endemic to those central Andes, in the north section of the central Andes, only found at high elevation in the Páramos above timberline. We did have to wear layers that day. It was a little crisp, but we managed to get, well, some of us especially could get a little bit closer to him. And sure enough, he put up a show for us. After, it's kind of a lazy, laid back hummingbird. It sits for long periods. In fact, this was one of the few pictures I managed to get him with the eyes open. So it was quite interesting to see. After a while, finally, okay, maybe it's time to get a snack, and then went flying around, and you could see him feeding on some of the flowers there. So this is one of the highly sought after species of the high Andes. Okay, so everybody, a good look. We're gonna move on to the next one. Not as a stunner as the other one, but this is a very special bird because it's an endangered species, right? Cauca guan. You can see the name there on the bottom right of the screen. Cauca is the name of that valley, name of that river. Cauca guan, very similar to the crested one. Probably one of those cases where these species evolved from the crested one into its own species. Vocalizations are different, size is different. There's more rufous on the wing and more rufous on the tail than in the crested one, and it does not have a crest as much, at least, as the crested one. The red dewlap is characteristic of that genus, but certainly we had these views at Otunquimbaya. This was shortly before we had the encounter with the tyras fighting on the road. So you can see there, this is sitting on a palm tree. Those little black things are palm fruits that we're feeding on, right? So this is it's an endangered species, but then once we are there, you start seeing them. It's like we were joking. It's some endangered species that you have, but no, it's because that's one of the places. That's one of their oases, one of those fortresses where they're protected, and then it's where the species is thriving. Okay, it suffered from hunting from previous years. It suffered from habitat shrinking as well. So that's why it is ranked as an endangered species. So everybody good with the one? Moving on. This is a bird that is found in other countries of South America. It does not cross into Central America, unfortunately, but sure, it's a gem to see. This particular case, we had really stunning views of. If you look in the water, the female is in the water right next to him. He's kind of like looking over and it's like, "I got you, honey. Don't worry. I'll protect you." But in fact, it was him going after her because she's a much better swimmer than he was. So that was a cool encounter, and this is the torrent duck, right? One of the most sought after. Everybody wants to see this one when they go to the Andes, especially. It extends farther south into Peru. I think it goes into Chile, but certainly exclusive to the Andes. And what I was most surprised, I always figure, what kind of outboard engine do they have? What kind of, because swimming up those fast rushing water rivers, they swim up like nothing. But look at the legs on that. Look at the legs on the male. Not only that beautiful red, but look at the web. Look at the toes, and look at the even at the claws at the end. So they use that for climbing the rocks and clinging to those rocks and getting around. Super powerful. It's like having one of those powerful outboard motors, I guess, and they can handle going up those rushing rivers like nothing, right? So this is a male sitting on the rock and a female down in the water. Females have beautiful buffy orange bellies and other parts, and the males, of course, have that face mark and the bright red bill. Torrent duck. This was at the Otun River, right, close to one of the lodges where we stay. Okay. So moving on. Now we're gonna go to the Cauca Valley, right? The Cauca Valley. We decided to visit this area because it broadens the Andean picture by adding wetlands and also other transition zones. And for example, we visit one of the most important wetlands in the country is Sonso Lagoon, a good place to look for herons, rails, and there's an endemic flycatcher that lives in that area, the apical flycatcher. We stay at a small lodge nearby, and it protects that area of transition. Transition means that it goes from the valley right into the foothills of the western the Andes, and also one other location that's farther north. It's called Guasimo. We had a good visit there with great views of manakins and other important birds. Um, Basically, what we aim with this is that these sites they complement the highland habitats and making this valley an essential addition to the birding trip, right? So these are some of the locations we're visiting: El Diamante Lodge, we're staying, and as I said, the complements by adding wetlands. And we visited those wetlands, and we had some really nice shots of this cute one. This is a spectacled parrotlet. It's smaller than most parrots and parakeets you've seen. You can see the blue spectacles on this male and the blue, that indigo blue wings. Beautiful little guys, and they were going all over the place eating those. I think that's a bush in the sunflower family, and they were eating the buds of that. So they were numerous. I mean, dozens of them flying around. And as we were just going through the wetlands, this one came close, very curious, and gave us a nice look. This is a spectacled parrotlet. It goes into this northern section of South America. It is also found in Panama and doesn't go much beyond that, right? So this will have a good chance to see. We, in fact, visited one of the research facilities there. We went to an observation tower, and they had signs of the common birds that they had. And sure enough, so we got on the sign. There was a spectacle parrotlet sitting on top of the sign that said spectacle parrotlet with his picture on it. That's the one of those things. And of course, camera wasn't ready, but uh, Cat can vouch for that probably. So moving on, this is that endemic flycatcher, not the most spectacular looking one. This is very close related to your ashy-throated Isamaiarchus, a great crested flycatcher, all of those in that family. The apical means the apex on his crest. Here is the apex, right? It's called apical flycatcher, and it is endemic to the Cauca Valley, right? We were fortunate to have a pair of them very curious following us around, and this one came, and well, this was probably the best chance we had for a picture of that one. And here we go. So this is one of those special species. Might not be as the brightest and most colorful, but again, being an endemic and being a very habitat specific means that how are we doing time? Means that they basically they need to have some extra protection. Another bird that we saw there, this is a bit more widespread in South America, but yet beautiful. And this was like challenging all those spider webs right there. Yellow oriole, right? We saw several of these as we were hiking the trails near Sonso Lagoon. Okay, yellow oriole. Okay, and now we're gonna finish here with the last part of the area that we'll visit, the Western Andes, specifically the Dagua Valley. This is more like in the central south part of the western section of the Andes in Colombia. This is a home of iconic places like Doña Dora's feeders. I will show you some of that later. The beautiful Araucana Lodge and surrounding areas, La Florida Reserve, which is the best place probably in the whole world to see the multicolored tanager, another endemic. Toucan barbets are also found, toucan barbets. So you can see this connects with the Chocó. So the toucan barbet, it's a Chocó endemic, so it moves up into this section here. So this is our best chance. So is the multicolored tanager, which is restricted to Colombia. This is a great chance, a great place to look for, excuse me, to look for the, mixed flocks, a lot of different species moving together through the forest. Very, very cool birding in that area. Okay, so this is part of the western. Again, central in the middle of the valley, and then the western section here. I have some samples of that. This is an endemic to that particular region, the black-headed brush finch. Brush finches are in the sparrow family and all that. In South America, they explode. There's lots of them around there. Okay. Also, well, this is the place where we look for some of those. Again, people relate to this when they think of the northern Andes. They talk about birds like this, right? This is the toucan barbet. It's not a toucan, but it's closely related to a toucan. It's a barbet. There are only two species in this genus, the Semnornis genus, and this one. And in the southern part of Central America and Costa Rica and Panama, we have the other one, which is not nearly as colorful, and it's called the prong-billed barbet. And that's it. It's a fairly large type of barbet, kind of chunky looking, but multicolor like that. It's amazing. And this comes to Doña Dora, this lady who started this little enterprise of offering people the chance to visit her place. They put feeders, and the tour operators and the guides and the people who are involved in the birding community in Colombia have encouraged her to continue to do that. And sure enough, it's a fantastic place to visit. Very successful. Always chances to see wonderful things there. Some of them are quite close. This, you see it outside the restaurant in the back. You could be sitting having a cup of coffee, and then boom, this bird comes, right? They have even nested right outside the restaurant where Doña Dora sits. Others demand a little bit more of a physical effort, right? Because there's a trail that goes down to see this. Okay, this is a lek. This is the Andean cock of the rock, perhaps the most iconic bird of the Andes, together with the condor and others. Uh, but this one demands probably about a half a mile trail, very steep down, and the trail doesn't have much really in the sense of it's a dirt trail essentially with some steps. There's some ropes and some railings you can use, but it's a bit of a steep trail. But once you get there, there's a hide that doesn't hide much because these birds are so used to seeing people around that they come pretty close. This bird was within what less than 10 feet from us, and we managed to get some amazing views. We could hear him displaying. We could see, that this is of course a male. There were, I believe, three males that time we went there. We had to start before sunrise. We got there. We started hiking right at the break of dawn and got to the place because that's when they're active. After that, they're gone and they're not seen again for the day. Okay, so this is something to consider that you have to negotiate these sort of steep, somewhat difficult trails to get to this, particularly to this lek. Lek is the displaying, the courtship display area of birds, and LAK. And but this was probably the most strenuous activity that we had. And coming back up because you have to hike down and then up again. And there's no escalator, there's no helicopter to come and pick you up. You have to get back up on your feet. And on the way there, there's a station where they have a moth trap, so that attracts also a few other birds. And we had a great time. But again, conditions were a little. Very good. So this, what I just did, basically, I've had to struggle finding three birds for each of the areas that we visited, because there's more. Of course, there's much more than that. But very important. Colombia's bird life and biodiversity in general is supported by a national framework of approximately 60 national parks, right? Protecting different areas that are more than 1,400 IBAs, important bird areas, but you can update this to important biodiversity areas. These are areas that have been recognized as special conditions to protect and support local species. It is important to know that there is a bunch of local NGOs and grassroots initiatives that are working together to connect the fragmented habitat by creating biological corridors and protecting critical hotspots like that. And it's conservation is not specifically for the birds in general. It's a more integral activity. It's for everybody, and it is good to see that the Colombians are really getting involved with this. They're getting connected into this. One of the best ways to encourage and continue to do this is by promoting birding tourism and communities. Okay, it's a very effective conservation tool. We have ecotourism and birding tourism per se, and visiting reserves like Otún, Tinamu, Rio Blanco, places like that. That we are basically Doña Dora, the lady that has the cock of the rock, and the cock of the rock, and the toucan barbet. Basically, it's a way of encouraging these people to continue their work in conservation like that. Okay, so we have managed to connect with directly with a couple of these organizations. We're going to be sponsoring a raptor rehab center outside of the town, the city of Pereira, and we will have a visit with them, and they're going to tell us about the project. They're working extensively in the protection of the uh, black and chestnut eagle and other birds of prey on the Andes. Right, it's a highly endangered species, that one. Yeah. All right, so that's the black and chestnut eagle. Speaking of, right. To summarize this and land it, right? These central western Andes, together with the Cauca Valley, they form a biodiversity triangle. This is within a relatively compact area, right? We can, reach to these places and find these amazing species. Okay. This concentration and accessibility, right, make this hard central part of the Andes a prime destination for birding, right? It's accessible for research also. Saying there's currently organizations working together in research and and conservation, right? Together, hand by hand with the birding tourism, right? And also it's a way of supporting the local conservation. All right. So this is the black and chestnut eagle. We were at Rio Blanco Reserve. We were waiting there in the parking lot, and boom, there just flew overhead like that. This is a large bird, highly endangered. There are less than 1,000 individuals out in the wild, and we were fortunate to see this nice male. Well, we considered it was a male, but it was an adult that is soaring quite a bit high. As you can see, the picture doesn't have the best quality, but sure enough, was an exciting moment for us to see this one. Okay. With this, we want to, as you will learn very soon in the next few days, La Hontan Audubon Society, or the soon to be Northwestern Nevada Bird Alliance, in partnership with us, we are also switching a little bit, a few things here, and we're going to go into Flyway Birding Tours from now on. We'll be offering this exciting tour in Colombia in February next year. Okay, and given all the opportunities to visit all these places and to meet all these people and enjoy the amazing food and the coffee, I insist, and all that. Oh, that's amazing. The food was delicious. Um, so this trip will be again advertised pretty soon. I added some notes here, just so you know that this. I think personally, I believe that this trip is for those of you who wish to expand a little bit more your knowledge about the neotropical birds. Um, you should again consider some of the conditions like that, like the steep trails and the extended periods of time. Early starts. Most days will start at 4:35 a.m. Right, and a couple of windy roads everywhere, pretty much. And long drives, this is moving from one location to the next. But once you get to the location, all the sites are nearby. Okay, so we're going from lodge to lodge, maybe periods of 3 to 5 hours in some cases, right? Very important also to consider this as a factor is that we'll be moving in an elevation from approximately 3,000 feet to over 13,000 feet, 13,500 feet above sea level, right? Although these lodges are wonderful, the people are super nice, super friendly. Colombians are very lively people, very outgoing, and they always like to share with you, right? So again, the accommodations will be at some places, I would say basic, but very, very comfortable. And the food, of course, is amazing, right? So this is a great opportunity to expand and expand your knowledge about the birds here in the tropics and what goes on with the residents, with the endemics, with the migrants, and then what people there are doing to protect them. Okay, I later on we will have another opportunity to discuss more in detail the again the logistics of the trip and all. It was just sort of a teaser, but my main goal was to uh, basically just give you uh, wait, give you an idea of the. Hang on a second. Let's see myself. Okay. Here we go. Give you an idea of what the trips is about. You guys see this now? Okay. And I have one more slide here. Go on. Okay. So this is the multicolored tanager. This is the bird that represents a lot of what goes on there, right? This is an endemic little tanager, but sure enough, this is the male. He came, checked around, looked around, had a bite. There were some banana feeders nearby, and then boom, it just in a split second it was gone again. This was at La Florida, one of the most iconic and beautiful birds in in Colombia, of course. One of those 2,000 species that they have there. Okay, so my time is up. I think I did more than 40 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, well, first, thank you for your attention. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was very basic, but it was just an overview again, because when you speak about the birds of South America, birds of Central America, Colombia specifically, you need days. You can't do it in 40 minutes, so you need days to present this. And again, this was an overview, an introduction, and an overview to what goes on there.